A very warm welcome and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Each and every week, I have the pleasure and privilege of having a meaningful conversation and breaking bread virtually with CEOs, authors, and global entrepreneurs. And today is no exception. It gives me great pleasure to warmly welcome Dr. Ivan Misner, who is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization. Founded in 1985, the organization now has over 10,000 chapters throughout every populated continent in the world. Each year, BNI passes millions of referrals, resulting in billions of dollars worth of business for its members. Dr. Ivan Misner is from the University of Southern California. He's a New York Times bestselling author who's written over 26 books, including one of his latest books we'll be discussing today, Who's in Your Room? He's also a columnist for theentrepreneur.com and has been a university professor, as well as a member of board of trustees for the University of Louvain. Called the father of modern networking by both Forbes and CNN. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Ivan Misner.
Hello, it's great to see you again, my friend. Thanks for inviting me on to talk to you today.
An absolute pleasure, Ivan. I fondly remember our time together many years ago, both in Dubai and Mumbai.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute pleasure in today's world to spend this time with you virtually. So thank you for your valuable time as well.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. You know, I think an entrepreneur is either working in their flame or working in their wax. And when they're in their flame, they're on fire, they're excited, they love what they're doing. You can hear it in their voice, you can see it in the way they behave. When they're working in their wax, it just takes all their energy away. You can hear that in their voice. You can see that in the way they behave. This is my flame. I love talking to people. I love pouring into people and, talking about things that have worked for me, failures I've had, successes that I've had. So this is my flame. I love doing it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, one question I love to ask all my guests, because to me, there's always something that's really drives each one of us to get up each and every day, make a difference and add value. And that is, Ivan, what's your personal why?
Yeah, so we talked briefly about this, and my why is kind of a long story. I'll give you a real short version of it. We all have people that are in our story, people that have made a difference in our life. I've got several, and that's where my why comes from, is one of those stories where this person is really, truly in my life and made a major difference in who I was to become, because I was literally only 13 when I met this teacher who guided me in really powerful ways. And so as I grew older, I recognized that we all have our own story and we have our why. But I came to the realization that there's something more important than who's in our story. What's more important is whose story are we in? Whose life have we changed in some way to help them in their life? And so for me, my why has become sort of replicating what this teacher did for me in helping inspire people to be their best. And when I can do that, then I'm making a difference in other people's lives. And so to me, it's not just who's in my story, but whose story am I in? Whose life have I changed in some way to help them throughout their journey? And so that's the short version of my why.
Thank you, Ivan. Then you've written many books, I think over 20 books, as I shared in the brief introduction. And one particular book that we'd love to address in our conversation today is Who's in Your Room? Yeah. Firstly, the title, and if you could share some insights into what this book is all about and who best would sort of appreciate the content that you have shared in this book.
Yeah, it's a short book. This is the book. I mean, you can read it in just a couple of hours. And we wrote, I have a couple of co-authors. We wrote it to be very actionable. We wanted people to be able to read it and go, all right, these are the things I need to do. So here's the concept of the book. Imagine you live your life in one room, and that one room has only one door, And that one door is an enter only door. So that when people come into your room or into your life, they're there forever. You can never get them out. Now, luckily, this is a metaphor. But if it were true, would you be more selective? I'm asking you, would you be more selective if you knew you couldn't get people out of your room?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. So then our question is, why aren't we? Why aren't we more selective? Because I would argue it's more than a metaphor. So here's what I'd like you to do. And if you're watching this or listening to this, I want you to do the same thing that I'm going to have Gautam do here. I want you to think of somebody that you got out of your life, because people say to me, it is a metaphor. I can get people out of my life. So I want you to think of someone that you got out of your life. I want you to think of why you wanted them out of your life. Maybe they were toxic, difficult, whatever the reasons. So do you have somebody in your mind?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not, so you can relax. I'm not going to ask you to share who it is. Right? But I want you to think about that person. If you're watching this or listening to this, I want you to think of someone. Now I want you to think of what it was they did that was the final straw. You were done with them. This was enough. So do you have that experience in your mind? Does it bring you aggravation? Yeah?
Yes.
So here's the deal. If they're still in your head, they're still in your room. And they will be for the rest of your life. Because when you bring people into your life or into your room, their fingerprints are all over your brain forever. And, people, they say, well, I can put them in another room. I could do this. No, here's the room. The room begins here and ends here. The room is your mind. And that's why it is so expansive. But the thing is, the people that you have any kind of personal or professional relationships with, they're going to be part of your mind and your personal experiences for the rest of your life. And that's why you have to guard your room carefully to make sure that you're letting the right people in. And that's the concept of the room.
It's simple, but absolutely very powerful to actually apply this. So I think first is to accept this as a reality, not just a concept. And once you accept as reality, as you very rightly asked me, you'll actually really think before letting someone in your room. So really enjoy it.
And now, that person, the experience that you had with that person is there with you forever. And you're going to make decisions in the future based on your experience with that person in the past. But here's the thing. It's both good and bad. You may make choices in the future based on good experiences that you had in the past without recognizing that this person may not be the right person to match the good experience that you had in the past. On the flip side, this bad person's experience in the past may not match the new person that you're thinking of bringing into your life. So it's all about, really begins with recognizing what your values are. You got to get good with your values. You have to know what your values are. If you don't know what your values are, your room will be a revolving door for the rest of your life. You're just going to be letting people come in and they're not going out. And they'll come in and come in and come in and come in and come in because you don't know what's important to you in terms of the kinds of people that you want in your life.
Yeah, what you share, actually, Ivan, it actually triggers a quick story that really, my dad said, the two things that are most constant in life are change and challenges. Yeah. And he said that, the three sort of keys to success in when you solve a challenge, and just number one really relates to what you shared, is he said, surround yourself with the right people who inspire you, encourage you, uplift you to be the best version of yourself. Because the people you spend time with, be it your family, be it your friends, be it your team, be it your customers, those people you spend time with have a direct correlation to your mindset, to your energy levels, to everything about you, your thinking. And that's something that sort of aligns to, something you just shared as well.
Yeah. I mean, what you put in your brain comes out in your behavior. And what you put in your brain are the people that are around you. And the people around you, and we talk about this in the book, the people around you are either engines or anchors.
Right.
They're either an engine that is going to make you a better version of yourself. They help you drive forward, or they're anchors. They're trying to pull you down, and they're being difficult. They're holding you back. The worst are the anchors with an engine attached that are trying to take you down fast, and under the pretense that they're a friend or that they care about you, but they don't behave that way. And so, one of the things that we talk about is you got to get good with your values. And there's so many instruments out there. You go to the internet and take a test on what your values are. There's so many. There's free ones. There's ones you can pay for. If you read Who's in Your Room, there's a simple values instrument in there that you can determine some of your values. And then once you have that, then you can screen people more effectively as to whether you're going to let them in your room or whether you keep them out on the porch and they don't get to ever really get close to you as an individual.
Fantastic. This is absolutely powerful, and I'm going to raise my awareness level on this importance. It was something that you're aware of, but I really, really appreciate this valuable advice. Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah.
It leads me to my next question, which is, what is people's power on your happiness, and why?
Well, I think we give people too much power.
Right.
And when we give them that power, then it impacts our life. I mean, there's sometimes people in my life, particularly family members, who may be difficult. And so I have this mantra, and I got the mantra from a mutual acquaintance of ours, Jack Canfield. Jack's a really good friend, and Jack taught me this, and I think it's very effective. And you can use it for anyone really. Let's just, for argument's sake, say your spouse does something that you're not happy about. The mantra is, I have a spouse. I'm not my spouse. I have a spouse. I'm not my spouse. I have a son. I'm not my son. I have a daughter. I'm not my daughter. I have an aunt. I'm not my aunt. And one of the things that does mentally is say, okay, I don't have to fully engage in whatever they're doing right now. There is a mental separation between their behavior and who you are as an individual. In the book, we say, someone might be in your life, like a family member. You can't even get them out of your life, really. So someone might be in your life, but their baggage has to stay out. And then, we talk about in the book, how do you keep that baggage out? And I got a story that's going to be in the second edition. It's not in the current book. It's such a great story. This woman, they would have family dinners, and there was always one sister, big family. They'd have these family dinners, always had this one sister who would come to the family dinner, and she said she would throw in this verbal grenade into the family dinner, and it would create chaos. People would get mad. They'd start arguing. It would be a fight, and the dinner would break up. And so the family met without her one night and said, well, how are we going to deal with this? And this woman had read Who's in Your Room about the baggage staying out. So they came up with this idea. The next time she throws in a verbal grenade, everybody just look at her and say, oh, okay. And then turn back and go into your conversation. Ignore it. Nobody engage. So sure enough, next big dinner, boom, threw in the grenade. The entire family looked at her and went, huh, okay. And just went on. And she stopped doing it. She stopped doing it because she was getting some value out of bringing that baggage into the room and watching chaos ensue. But once the family no longer engaged, she just didn't do it. And oftentimes she wouldn't even show up because and when she came, she didn't do it anymore. And so there are ways of making sure that people's baggage stays out of your room.
Keep the baggage out.
Yeah. You may be in my life with your baggage. Check it at the door.
Check it at the door. There's something in your book you mentioned about sort of a doorman, and I just want to know what's the first step and towards becoming a doorman.
Yeah, so a doorman is your so basically you got to go hire a doorman. Now, I'm not actually talking about going out and really hiring a physical doorman. The doorman is your conscious and subconscious mind. And the doorman is, I mean, we all in one way or another mentally we talk to ourselves. So create this mental image of a doorman and then train your doorman on your values. In other words, get good with your values, know what they are, and have conversations with yourself, with this doorman, about what those values are. And the doorman then holds the door and opens the door for people that have values that are congruent. They don't have to be the same. As a matter of fact, there's some power in building a diverse network of people. So they don't have to have the same values as you, but they can't have incongruent values that would create a clash. And so your doorman is your conscious and subconscious mind that allows people into your room who have values that are resonant with yours, not dissonant with yours. And we talk about how you create that and what they look for.
Fantastic. No, that's great. I think we touched upon this but if you could elaborate more perhaps on how do you decide who actually enters your room?
Yeah, well, one of the things that you have to do is you have to really learn how to say no. No is a one-word sentence, or no can be a one-word sentence. And what's really interesting is that in the media, particularly radio interviews that I did when the book came out,
yes,
the number one requested topic was this section of the book. And it was how to say no without sounding like a jerk or worse. And so one of the ways that you keep people out of your room is by learning when and how it's appropriate to say no. And my favorite technique is, I love this technique and I use it a lot. I almost hated writing it down because people read it and they're like, "You've done that to me." So, there's a double-edged sword there. But here's the technique. If I said yes to you, I'm afraid I'd let you down.
Wow.
Yeah, people don't know what to do with that because it's like, I never used the word no. I never said no. I just said, look, if I said yes to that, I'm afraid I'd let you down. And then, give it a good pause and explain why. I don't have the bandwidth. This isn't my area of expertise. I don't want you in my room. Don't share that. That's internal dialogue. But you have to learn how to say no. And then we have a number of techniques in there. But the second technique I often use in conjunction with the first technique. And that is to refer them to someone else. So, and you don't do it just because, this person is toxic and you want to turn them over to somebody else.
You turn them over to our competitors then, Ivan.
Well, you can do that. If they're toxic, give them to a competitor. But let's just say their project or their values just aren't necessarily congruent with yours, but somebody that they might be a good fit, is to say to them, I'm not able to do this, but let me refer you to somebody who I think this would be a good fit with. And of course, in running BNI, world's largest networking organization, that's a real natural for me, but I think it could work for anybody, is to say, let me refer you to somebody where this, what you're looking for might be a better fit. And no matter what, you just have to learn to say no. And that's really difficult for new entrepreneurs because they want to say yes to everything. And
right.
In the long run, you regret it. You really, really regret it.
That's a really, really valuable input on that because especially in this part of the world, in India, culturally, it's like taboo or very difficult to say no.
Yeah.
So because they feel it's perceived as impolite, it's culturally insensitive, it can be seen to be offensive. So, reframing it without saying no. One is obviously, I don't want to let you down. That's obviously a good one. And I really resonate with the second one because it's something that I do on a regular basis. I'm very, very clear on the type of customer and the type of speakers we want to work with.
Right.
And I don't enjoy saying no. And if I can be genuinely helpful by referring them to an organization that has the capacity, the bandwidth, or the alignment to really what they're looking for, I guide them, and I feel I'm still being helpful.
Yes.
And that's something that they accept and they appreciate. So you want to be seen as helpful, kind, at the same time respect your room without highlighting that as the reason, but it's really being helpful.
And I don't like burning bridges. I like to keep decent relationships, even if the person's not really in my room. And so I think it's a great way of redirecting them without even using the word no. The word no doesn't even come up. And so I think it's culturally very sensitive.
That's great. That's great. So how do we respond and manage negative people? I know you gave one great example in the earlier part of this conversation of that one particular individual as an example. Are there any other suggestions in how we respond and manage negative people?
Absolutely. First and foremost, you've got to have a strong doorman who's not letting them in your room. But then, of course, when you didn't understand the concept, maybe you just let people in, and you've got family members and they come in. And so let's say we're talking about people who are already in your room. The first technique I gave you is very good. The second technique is really very similar to the first in the sense that you're drawing a line in the sand and you're saying, this is acceptable behavior. When you cross that line, it's not. And you don't allow that baggage in your room. And here's another example. One of my co-authors, Rick Sapio, his mother, he had 7 or 8 brothers and sisters, and his mother had a lot of emotional issues, and she was very, very toxic. And he knew it. He understood why. But he was a good son. He called her every Sunday. She didn't live nearby, but he called her every Sunday to talk to her. And she would just launch off on these angry tirades about his siblings. And one day, we're working on the room concept. And one day he says to her, Mom, I love you very much, but we can't continue to have these conversations where you're very negative about my brothers and sisters. So from now on, when you start to launch off about one of my siblings, I'm just going to say to you, Mom, I love you a lot. I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye. And I'm going to hang up. And she was like, yeah, whatever. And so the next week came along, 2 minutes into the conversation. And he says, Mom, I love you very much. I look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye. And hung up. Now, the next week, he's talking to his mom for like 15 minutes. It's all good. And then about the siblings. And he stopped her and he said, Mom, I love you very much. I look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye. And he hung up. He said, for the rest of my mother's life, we had the best conversations we ever had as adults. And he said she lived for a couple more years, and the conversations were deep and they were wonderful. And sometimes they were shallow and fun, but they were always good. And it wasn't like, life was perfect for her. She would talk about her challenges, but talking about challenges that you're having is different than complaining about somebody else. And he said it was the best years of his adult life with his mother. And let's do a little bit of a deep dive on that. He drew a line in the sand. He said, the baggage stays out, without saying those words. He said, the baggage stays out. This is the baggage. It stays out. He said what he would say, and it was loving and caring. It wasn't, hey, look, I've had it enough with this. You can't do this anymore. I'm hanging up. It was, Mom, I love you very much. I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye. Click. And it just laid the groundwork from a position of love and care. But the line was drawn and she couldn't cross it. You may be in my life, but your baggage has to stay out. And to me, that is one of the classic examples of how to do it.
Invaluable, Ivan. And I can really relate to what you shared. And, he still communicated with love and respect, but which was key. I love you, and in terms of care for you, I respect you, but that's a boundary that I'm not willing to cross. And okay, once, twice, third time, eventually that change happened, and the remaining couple of years or so was far more fulfilling. And again, the distinction, sharing challenges and problems is fine. I mean, we all go through it, and we want to be there for our family members, to be empathetic listeners, but not toxic, negative, complaining, third-party sort of references in toxic conversation.
Exactly. And if that happens, let's say she did continue to do it. That's certainly the point at which you say, I have a mother. I'm not my mother. Those are the choices that she is making in life. I have held out an olive branch. I want to have a conversation with her, but it's got to be a healthy adult conversation, not an unhealthy, immature conversation. And those are her choices that she's making. That's where I have a parent, I'm not my parent comes in.
Yeah, no, great. So you've got the plan A, and then you have the contingency plan, because especially when it comes to family members, be it parents, in-laws, brothers, sisters, these are people who are already a part of your room to some extent. I mean,
you had no choice. Your doorman had no choice on that.
Yeah, you were born with these family members, and that's something that has come up in my personal life as well. And I sort of I manage the time I spend with these individuals, and I keep that to birthdays, anniversaries, and special occasions only. Having given a chance with plan A or plan B first, I definitely want to have given them the clarity of their boundary. But if for a reason they are who they are and they're unwilling to make that change, you just minimize your time with the people who are in your room who are not meant to be in your room.
So we talk about that in the book as well. We call it homeopathic doses, which is the minimum dose necessary to deal with somebody. Awesome. And then benign neglect. Now, benign neglect, it works really well. And we'll talk briefly about benign neglect. Do you have any friends that you went to college with, or maybe high school with, that you just lost touch with over the years? They were friends, you liked them, but you just lost touch with them over the years, right? We all have that.
Yes, absolutely.
I certainly do. How did that happen? It happened through benign neglect. It wasn't on purpose. You liked them. It would have been nice to stay in touch, but somehow you didn't. So benign neglect works. Do it with a plan. So have a plan for benign neglect when you have people that you don't want to continue that relationship with, but they're in your room, which is exactly what you described.
Yeah.
So you create a plan to spend less time with them. And then you use homeopathic doses, the minimum necessary. So let's say you're going to be in one of your friends or a family member, you're going to be in town where they live far away. You're going to be in town, and they're going to see it on Facebook that you were in town. And then they're going to be mad at you because you didn't say anything. So what you do is you tell them the night before by email. Hey, I'm going to be in town tomorrow. I'd love to get together between 1 and 1:30 if you'd like to get a cup of tea. I'm free between 1 and 1:30. Now, half the time, they won't even see the email. And so you're good. The other half, they'll say, okay. And then you've given margins where it's like, okay, between 1 and 1:30, I'm available. You meet and you do the homeopathic dose, the minimum dose necessary. Now, I taught my son this, and he's like, yeah, Dad, just tell him you don't want to hang out with them. And yeah, you could do that. But I just don't like burning bridges. There's no good reason for me burn bridges. I'd rather do homeopathic doses, be civil with each other, and just not let that person disrupt my room anymore.
Absolutely. I think our personalities, yours, mine, and being a relationship driven, whether we're introverts or extroverts, our principles, our values wouldn't allow us to sort of burn bridges. We would rather, create those boundaries and have those sort of managed.
Well, my son's a game programmer, so he doesn't have those boundaries. It's like, just write him out of your game.
Great. Just a couple more questions before we wrap up. But, the last 12 to 18 months has been a really difficult time across the globe. Age no bar, culture no bar, country no bar. Everyone has been exposed to these changes and challenges. Now, one set of people have sort of looked at it negatively, have been stressed, anxious for various reasons. But there are another set of people who've looked at, the opportunities and learning that this work from home has presented. What's been your personal experience, Ivan, in the last 12 to 18 months in terms of how you've reframed this time, and what opportunities and learning has presented for you personally and professionally?
So I have seen this over the years. I have enough gray hair to people know I've been around a while, and I've seen difficult times. Nothing quite like COVID. My experience of people in difficult times is that they either get frozen by fear or they get focused by fear. They either get frozen by fear or focused by fear. And the people who get frozen by fear end up struggling. They end up having a lot of difficulties, oftentimes filing bankruptcy. When you give up all hope, you have no chance. But those people who get focused by fear, and we live in fearful times, I don't deny that, but those people who get focused by it and look at it and say, what opportunities are there, are the ones that will get through this and not only survive, but potentially thrive. And I'm coming at it from the perspective of running a network. And I believe that your network is a beacon of hope in a sea of fear. The people who help you be successful are the people who can help you through challenging times. And that hope is more powerful than fear. And these are the messages that I try to give my members of BNI, that you can get through this, but you have to lean on each other. You have to be there for each other. You have to support one another. And I have story after story after story of people who've been there to support one another and have not only survived, they have actually thrived. We have just in BNI, the trailing 12 months, for up until September 1st of this year, 12 months earlier, BNI members passed more than 16 million referrals to each other in the middle of COVID and generated over 18 billion, with a B, 18 billion US dollars in business for each other during the middle of COVID. So I believe hope is more powerful than fear. Hope plus a plan plus action will get you through any difficult time.
Phenomenal. No, that's great summary and valuable words of advice. And you've had the wealth of experience of many cycles. COVID happened to be perhaps one of the most challenging ones of all time, but the philosophy and the application of living in hope rather than fear definitely stands good. So that's been great. So last but not least, that I launched my book, Breaking Bread, Building Meaningful Relationships for Long-Lasting Success. So I want to know, Ivan, what does breaking bread mean to you?
To me, it is about sharing. A fun session of breaking bread is about sharing enjoyment of each other's company. It's about the experience that you have with someone else. And I mean, I have probably more examples than you can imagine, but if you want, I'm happy to share one. But it's about sharing special moments with people you love and respect.
Yeah, I'm sure we could, as we're wrapping up, feel free to share one story or one example of breaking bread.
So one that really stands out to me, I studied at the University of Southern California with Warren Bennis. He was on my doctoral committee, and Warren Bennis was, in his day, I mean, I did my doctoral work in the 80s and I got my degree in 93. So in his day, he was the John Maxwell of leadership. World's leading expert on leadership. And I remember an evening I had dinner with him, and it was my late wife and myself and him. And we had just such a wonderful dinner. And he spent that dinner, it was before he was going to speak that night at the University of Laverne. And he spent that evening just pouring into me in the way I said, I want to pour into other people. That's what he did with me that night, was he poured into me and talked about the importance of emotional intelligence, the importance of adaptive capacity. And he said, in leadership, people don't talk about adaptive capacity and contextual intelligence, that you have to have context for the situation because they're all different. And then you have to be able to adapt to that context. And he poured into me these concepts that I found fascinating, valuable, and I just felt like an amazing connection with an old professor of mine who I studied under at the University of Southern California. And it was probably one of the more memorable breaking bread moments for me.
Thank you so much, Ivan, for sharing that. It's been an absolute pleasure. Perhaps we could take a quick pic with both our books on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Are you kidding? Happy to do that.
All right. 1, 2, and 3. Cheers. Fantastic. So both our books, Breaking Bread and Who's in Your Room, are available on Amazon. That's probably the easiest location wherever you are in the world to get a copy. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a CEO, business leader, I think these books are for everyone who sort of aspires to build relationships with the right people, spend time with attracting the right people to be in your room, be it family, be it friends, be it customers, be it your team members, because who's in your room will have a direct correlation to who's in your mind, the kind of energy you have, your outlook on life, and how you respond to different situations. Because when you surround yourself with the right people, you will automatically uplift, encourage, and be inspired to be more responsive positively. So as we wrap up today, Dr. Ivan Misner, any closing comments or words you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, well, you know, I've talked briefly about BNI. I think the one thing I would leave with the viewers and listeners is about networking. That networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with people. And so you know, Who's in Your Room doesn't sound like a networking book, but networking is about relationships. And so Who's in Your Room is about relationships. And so they're looking at relationships from two different perspectives. And that's all about farming. It's about cultivating connections with people. It's not just who's in your database. It's who's in your database, who's in your phone that you could call and ask for a favor. Would they be willing to do it? And so it's really about building relationships. It's not just about the contacts you have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ivan, for this valuable time to have a meaningful conversation, break bread virtually. And I very much look forward to meeting you in person once again in better times, hopefully in 2022. My best wishes to you and the family. And thank you once again for this valuable time together.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite. I'm happy to come back anytime, my friend.
Thank you. God bless. Cheers. Bye-bye.